Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar for small and medium-sized businesses on OHS due diligence challenges and reopening challenges during the new normal and how WSIB Excellence rebates can help you during this. We have speakers highly experienced in the field of occupational health and safety on this call, who are external auditors and ISO lead auditors as well. So they'll guide you through some of the key elements and provide you with lots of insights. That's the whole idea of this webinar. So without any further delay, let's move on to see what the agenda is for today. So we're going to start off with the OHS challenges during the new normal for SMEs. And then you're going to be, then the external core auditor and ISO lead auditor is going to be talking about the OHS due diligence challenges under the new normal and the roles and responsibilities of key workplace parties, all the three workplace parties that we have. And this and a sustainable OHS program solution for SMEs, and about investing in your OHS program via the WSIB Excellence. So the first speaker for today is going to be John Turner. And John Turner has over 20 years of experience as an executive leader working with Fortune 500 companies before partnering with 4S 3 years ago. He's a director of BD for 4S, and John has a lot of insights and leadership experience that he would like to share on this call and add value to people on this call. Without any delay, let me pass it over to John Turner.
Thank you, Adi, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. As we all know, in the past 18 months, the small, medium-sized business market has been impacted in several different ways. But some are thriving through new business opportunities, some trying to retain revenue and keep the key clients. And unfortunately, some businesses are experiencing declining revenue and looking for new ways to bounce back. Regardless how the SMEs are doing through the new normal, they all face challenges, especially when it comes to creating a health and safety program and management system and for the return of workers. Here are some key challenges that you may relate to. Dedicated resource. Now, this is the most common one. In a lot of cases, SMEs can't afford a dedicated health and safety resource. So what happens? The responsibilities are assigned to an HR manager, if you have one, an office manager, supervisor, or even a worker. We're all at full, bandwidth capacity, which leads to the next challenge, lack of time. We know this one. Just like anything, if you don't allocate enough time and commitment, you'll create gaps and risk to the business, especially when it comes to health and safety. If you don't have a compliant health and safety program, it's like driving a car without car insurance. It's the law and you know it, but if you have an accident, you'll face the consequence. And unfortunately, the consequence for an SME can be very costly in so many ways. Another challenge is lack of knowledge for creating and implementing a health and safety program. It can be very challenging and overwhelming for someone who doesn't have a health and safety certification or any previous health and safety experience to be responsible for creating a health and safety management system and even getting the company to full compliance and keeping that compliance alive. Very challenging. During this webinar, we're going to share some insights and provide suggestions about workplace hazard assessment policies and procedures, workplace inspections and investigations, employee orientation and training, because you got to look at a lot of employees have been working from home. So through the new normal, people are going to come back to the workplace. So there's been creating some other gaps that you're probably not even aware of. For those on this webinar, if you are a company that has gaps in your health and safety program and you know you're not compliant and face resource and bandwidth challenges, later on in this webinar at a high level, I'll go through our unique SME support program to assist with those challenges and, more importantly, to maximize your rebate with the WSIB Excellence Program. Adi, next slide. Now, this slide is the reason why WSIB, with the collaboration with the CPO, created the Excellence Program. Fatalities and critical injuries in workplaces do happen in all business sectors, not just construction. If this happens in your workplace, you want to be prepared to look for the spouse or the family member in the eye and say you did everything possible to avoid this terrible incident. Now look at the WSIB claims allowed and lost time. This directly impacts your bottom line as a small business. As you can rely on each employee to be at your workplace to run your business effectively, you can't afford these claims or lost time. Safety should be proactive, not reactive. Having a health and safety management system in your workplace will allow you to be proactive. Regardless how great your company is and how strong your leadership team is, you can't control all accidents. But as an employer, the one thing you can control is proving due diligence. If something does happen, that's why having a health and safety management system in your workplace is so critical. There's things that you're going to learn from the next speaker. I'm going to let Addie you introduce Sobi. Sorry, I'll give it back to you, Addie. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for that, John. That really sets the context absolutely right for this webinar. And without any delay, let me quickly introduce our next speaker. Her name is Sobi Raghunathan. Sobi is an ISO 45001 lead auditor and IHSA Associate External Core Auditor, as well as the Vice President Consulting and Training for 4S Consulting. Sobi has been supporting diverse Canadian businesses of different sizes in implementing and maintaining sustainable OHS programs. And she's part of the League of Champions and supports the industry and various businesses such as you on this call in promoting a strong health and safety and in promoting safety leadership during the COVID pandemic. So we also came up with free online training offerings for employers such as you to mitigate COVID-19 at your workplaces. So, and she sits on the board of governors for Ryerson University. Without any further delay, let me pass it over to Sobi Raghunathan, who's going to be talking about the mandatory OHS compliance requirements for SMEs and taking over the entire due diligence part and taking you guys through it. Over to you, Sobi.
Thank you so much, Addie and John. All of you today who have joined us, thank you for joining us this morning. This particular seminar, I would personally like to have it face-to-face in a setting, but thanks to COVID, we have all got used to the virtual world. I do want to have interactions as part of this presentation. That's, you know, these seminars are great. You could come, listen, take some points, notes, and then try to go out there and implement some of this. But when you interact, when you participate, the level of engagement, that level of understanding improves tremendously. So, Eddie, I hope they have the ability to unmute and speak as part of it, or is it only done through chat?
We do have the Q&A section where they can ask as many questions as they want, and we can tackle it either during the session or we have a Q&A session any which way during the last 15 minutes.
So I'm assuming that's done through chat. So that being said, you know, the title of this webinar is Reopening Challenges as well as Due Diligence. So all of us, as especially SMEs, and there are some large organizations who have joined us today, thank you for that. And the large organizations, you may have much more resources to support with quickly facing some of the challenges that we are not used to in the past. But with SMEs, we are always stretched for resources. You know, we operate in a very thin margin. We are very careful of the number of people that we recruit to support with the various different aspects of the operations. Health and safety is most of the time seen as a core sector. And it's where SMEs tend to ask, just like John has opened with his statement, lack of resources. You don't have a dedicated person in most cases. You know, health and safety is one of many hats most of the people wear in an SME. That being said, the reopening challenges, COVID threw an interesting curveball in all of our business, and the way how we live, the way how we operate, things have changed. Is it going to go away? Nobody knows the answer today. We just have to learn to live with the new norm. That means we do need to factor these new norms as part of our workplace strategies as well. It's not just, wearing a mask or, getting vaccinated. It goes beyond that. At the workplaces, you do need to have certain protocols in place. Before I go through some of those details, I do want to kind of start off by saying, especially with SMEs, it's no surprise to us. I mean, I have been doing this for over 20 years. When we ask the questions, do you know what is your mandatory compliance requirement when it comes to OHS compliance for SMEs? A lot of people, say, yeah, I need to have a policy for health and safety. I need to have few people trained. But what are some of the details? When do you need to have a written policy or a procedure? So we want to start the context by giving you some of the factual regulatory requirements and then go into the details. If you have 5 or more employees regularly employed, so it could be part-time staff, it could be contractual staff, but these people do work for you on a regular basis, then you do need to have a written health and safety program in place. So that's the first statement is 5 or more employees regularly employed, you do need to have a written health and safety program, and you do need to establish that you are taking all reasonable precautions under any circumstance your employees. The second thing that you should know is if you have 20 or more employees regularly employed, then you do need to have a joint health and safety committee. In Ontario, you do need to have the committee consisting of one manager. So it could be a supervisor, it could be a manager, it could be a lead person who gives directions to others, and one employee. The employee have to be nominated by the workers or the other employees. And these 2 people have to be certified. These are minimum requirements. What we recommend to our clients is have maybe 4 people in the committee. If you can, afford to get all 4 of them trained, more the merrier. You could divide up different responsibilities and hold them accountable rather than just having 2 people, because one person leaves, then you're not in compliance. But the 2 is a minimum requirement, and the training have to be taken by ministry approved training providers. And the third thing that all of you should know is there are some mandatory training that all your employees have to take. Whether they work part-time, full-time, you are hiring them from a temporary agency, you do need to ensure that they have the mandatory training. WIMS 2015, employee awareness or supervisors awareness based on their responsibilities, awareness to workplace violence and harassment, and AODA. These are the 4 mandatory training that you do need to ensure that your employees take. It can be taken in a form of e-learning, which is the most easiest way, and you could show training. It can be done in a classroom. Find out whatever way that you're going to do it, but these 4 training have to be delivered to your employees. These are the mandatory compliance. When we talk about due diligence is a big term. There's financial due diligence, there are so many different due diligence. Today's context is narrowing down to OHS due diligence. What does it mean to you? When you hear the word due diligence, what does due diligence mean to you? So, Addie, can you please go back to the first slide? If you have a notebook, and if you have a paper and a pen in front of you, just jot down what due diligence mean to you in relation to OHS. Take a minute or 2, write that down. how can you prove due diligence? So what does it mean, and how can you prove OHS due diligence? I really want you to take the time to do this exercise because it will really help you understand how you're going to maintain and sustain your program. Eddie, can you move to the next slide, please? So when we talk about due diligence, and especially, I'm going to give you the context of, what are some of the things that you need to do to prove due diligence in regards to health and safety. Every employer, and I know there's a mixed group of people who have registered for this seminar, some of you are safety coordinators, some of you are business owners, we have HR directors, HR managers, so various different levels of responsibilities and levels of management. For health and safety due diligence, the most important thing that you need to do is, how do you start health and safety due diligence? Where do you start? What's your starting point? The starting point always goes back to identifying your hazards and exposures in your line of business. Whatever hazards you have in a restaurant would be different than what people will have in a hotel, or what people will have in a manufacturing organization. Manufacturing organization is a very broad term. Depending on the type of organization, the type of equipment you have, the warehouse you have, the type of equipment you would have in your warehouse. Construction, are you a GC, general contractor? Are you a trade specific? What type of trade specific? So identifying your hazards and exposures is step number one. And you cannot be general about this. You have to be very, very specific about your hazards and exposures. One of the common things that I have seen in my 20 plus years of experience is hazard assessment is one of the weakest pieces that we see when whether we are going for a core audit as an external auditor, or ISO audit, ISO 45001, which relates to OHS, or any compliance for health and safety. The hazard assessment piece is always seen as the one that needs a little bit more attention, or needs a lot more attention. Hazard assessment is your foundation to your health and safety program. It's like if you build a house without having a proper foundation, is the house going to stand properly? You're going to have serious issues that's going to come. So the foundational piece is hazard assessment. And with COVID, those of you who have a hazard assessment, please go back and revisit what are some new hazards and exposures that you need to amend and revise your hazard assessment documents, and include some of those details, the COVID as a workplace hazard. What is a hazard? How are you going to control it? So from identifying hazards, then you go into how are you going to mitigate these hazards and risk. You need to have policies and procedures, just like we would have policies and procedures or workplace rules for vacation, sick time. You need to have policies and procedures for workplace hazards. Again, with some of the reopening challenges, go back and revisit anything that relates to COVID as a hazard in the workplace. How do you mitigate the exposure risk if you have an employee who is tested positive and you had other people working with that person? What are some protocol policies that you need to have in place? This, again, these are policies and procedures. I'm not only narrowing it down to COVID, it actually have to include all the workplace exposures. So COVID is one of the workplace exposures that you guys need to include. And you do need to have specific policies and procedures. One thing, be conscious is when you develop your policies and procedures, you need to always make sure that you exceed the minimum standard. The minimum standards are just a guideline for you, and it's minimum so that you could meet the legal compliance. But it's always a good practice to exceed the minimum standards and based all your policies and procedures on best practices that's out there. Once you have and procedures, is it good to have these policies and procedures reside in a nice binder or your senior management's office or posted on the walls? Do you think that's good enough? You need to review these policies and procedures with your employees. The ones who do the various different tasks needs to review and acknowledge their specific policies and procedures that pertains to them. Again, this is the area of opportunity that we normally see as auditors, implementing programs, sustaining programs. People do amend their policies and procedures, but then they don't communicate to all the affected parties. You do need to have some sort of a paper trail to prove that these policies and procedures have been communicated to the affected parties. It can be in a form of sign-in sheet. In the olden golden days, everything was done with the sign-in sheets. But thanks to technology, we have many systems available where you can actually post the policies and procedures, assign it to the affected groups. They go in there, they read it, and they click on I acknowledge. You have a timestamp and record of all the people that they have acknowledged. You don't need to physically have a meeting and bring people together and do all this. And the last piece of the puzzle is you are doing all this, that's great. But are you sustaining your program? Many times when we go into SMEs, they have implemented the program at some time. It could be 5 years ago, it could be 3 years ago, it could be 8 years ago. But they haven't revisited their program. They have provided a whole pile of training, 2 years ago or 6, but they haven't done anything then. Is that going to help you prove due diligence? No. You need to make sure you sustain your program. How are you going to do that? You should audit your program. Have a habit of auditing your program on a set frequency. For SMEs, I would highly, highly recommend if you can put this as part of your budget to do it yearly. Then after you do your audits, your continuous improvement plan comes out. From your continuous improvement plan, you assign different responsibilities to different personnel and hold them accountable for implementing and maintaining it. If you cannot do it yearly, then do it at least every 18 months. No more than 24 months in my advice as safety leader to you guys, because 24 months is way too long. Then you need to reinvent the wheel. You're going to be spending a lot more money reinventing the wheel. So do budget and do have unbiased people looking at your program. People do not get your own staff to audit your own program because, again, they have their own personal pride in what they have implemented. And they will do what they think they understand as what needs to be done. But if there are opportunity for improvements, that's not going to be identified to the level it needs to if they don't have that kind of expertise. So always budget and have safety compliance reviews done on a regular basis. And Addie spoke about, and John spoke about being proactive. There are two main aspects of health and safety management system that I do want to talk about here is workplace inspections and accident investigations. These two are very, very crucial in managing your health and safety program. Workplace inspection is a mandatory requirement. If you are provincially, and most of you here are provincially regulated, and under the provincial regulation, it indicates that your workplace must be inspected once a month, or parts of your workplace must be inspected once a month. For large organizations where you would have thousands and thousands of square feet of location to manage, you may want to slice it and dice it in such a way that parts of your workplace is being inspected once a month. The entire workplace have to be inspected at least once a year if you have a large organization. Most of you here of SMEs, you can manage, multiple, if you're talking about a hotel, if you have 20 floors, can you do at least, 5 or 10 floors a month? That should be part of your plan. You do need to identify that. Regular monthly inspection is a proactive resource, proactive process to identify hazards before they become an accident or an incident. So accident investigation is a reactive process. Workplace inspection is a proactive process. So again, if you have a joint health and safety committee, you don't need to wait to have 20 people to have a joint health and safety committee. I normally recommend our clients, if you had about 15 employees, be proactive. You don't need to follow the minimum standards. You could have a committee. Maybe have 3 or 4 people in your committee. Divide up the responsibility. Divide up their responsibility even for doing inspection. You create a schedule. So every month it's a rotating people who are looking after the various different aspects of the program. Give them the training that is needed so that they understand their legal basics, they understand their regulatory requirements so that they can help you maintain the program. So monthly workplace inspection is important. You do need to have a policy and procedure that stipulates, how we are going to do it, who would be doing it. We are not looking for a name, but identify whether it's a joint health and safety committee or a safety person or a safety resource who would be responsible for making sure inspections get done. As an auditor, or what we identify is inspections are great. Are you documenting and tracking what you do in your inspection? You have pages and pages of inspections that are done. And there are many times, some of them are repeat items that you identify. That gives us an indication something is not working well. That means you're identifying stuff, but things are not being fixed. Or things are not being fixed to the extent that it needs to be fixed in a proactive, escalated manner. Each hazard needs to have a rating, whether it has a high impact to injure somebody or is it a low impact. A person who is doing the inspection needs to understand all that. Then they would actually identify the timelines to fix it. Then once you fix it, you do need to go in there and document if it's been completed. You do need to have some sort of a paper trail for maintaining all this. Again, whether you do it the old style paper form and fill out all the details and then go back and maintain it, or thanks to technology these days, you could log in, you could do the inspection, and the inspections get sent to the different types of senior management for review and acknowledgement, or it can even be configured to be sent to people who do need to take action, such as maintenance people or whoever it is. So these are some of the things that you do need to keep in mind. Investigations. When we talk about accident investigation, we are talking about identifying what went wrong. What was the root cause? Once you identify the root cause, come up with preventive measures, actions. Then you need to communicate the preventive actions to the affected parties. The whole purpose of accident investigation is to understand what went wrong and how can you prevent a similar type of incidents from happening again in the future. Lessons learned. Is it good enough? The person who is doing the accident investigation identifies what went wrong and then keeps it to themselves or senior management, but it doesn't get communicated to the staff who are working within that potential hazards or area. So communication of accident, again, this is another opportunity I always see as an external auditor is you identify, you do accident investigation, but nothing really happens after the investigation. You identify a root cause, then you actually come up with preventive actions and measures that needs to be communicated, and you do need to have some sort of a paper trail to show that it has taken place and who was there, is it the affected group, all that needs to be identified, and there have to be a process. Again, it goes back to having your policies and procedures and providing the necessary training for the people who are doing the investigation and senior management to understand the impact and how they are going to take preventive actions and communicate that. So again, these are ongoing processes. Every business have its own issues and challenges, turnovers that happens. People are not always there all the time. People come and leave. The knowledge lives with them as well. So it's always better to have more people trained, and you need to constantly revisiting to see how you update their training program, how you keep them communicated. So these are some of the things that you do need to factor in. Back to reopening challenges and COVID, if you had a situation in your workplace, you do need to investigate, you do need to take actions, you do need to see who else can be possibly being exposed, and you do need to have protocols in place. Again, going back to your policies and procedures, all these needs to mitigate the new hazards and the risks that we have due to the pandemic. So please make sure to include the COVID as a workplace hazard, and you do need to revisit your policies and procedures to keep them updated and communicate that to your employees. A supervisor, your middle management needs extra set of training. When it comes to your policies, procedures, legal responsibilities, I always tell all of our clients, whether they are going through the core journey with us or ISO implementation, ISO 45000 implementation, or SME clients, we always tell them, invest the time and money and resources with your middle management to give them the extra training and knowledge that's needed for them to help you sustain your health and safety program. If they don't understand their legal obligations, if they don't understand what is their requirements, how are they going to communicate and hold their employees accountable? How are they going to make sure that you're following your policies and procedures? So training is mandatory. Additional training is mandatory. Do not just, stick to the legal basics. Go beyond that to sustain the program. Eddie, can you move to the next slide?
Before I move to the next slide, Sobi, there is a question, and I think this is a pertinent slide because there is a point on JHSC as well. The question is from Tracy McKinney, and Tracy says, I know this is more to the hospitality industry, but how do the JHSC apply to offices that are remote hybrid? So there are less than 20 employees actually in the office physically. You got the right person here, Tracy, to answer the question. You got an ISO lead auditor. So, Sobi, if you could take that on, please.
So, thanks to COVID, this is a new game that we are playing with going things virtual. You may have less than 20 people physically in a location, but overall for the organization, do you have more than 20 employees? If the answer is yes, according to the current regulation, that's why I kind of stipulated on regularly employed. What is the definition of regularly employed? Does it mean all of them have to be in the office? No. So if you have more than 20 employees who are regularly employed, some of them may be working from home and others would be in the office, you do need to have a joint health and safety committee. And you do need to factor in the new processes, new way of doing things, and identify their work environments. If they are required to work from home, then that is considered a work environment. You do need to identify potential situations that may arise from that and include those in your policies and procedures. That's why it's very crucial for you to have more people trained on the legal basics. And I highly recommend Joint Health and Safety Committee people training for more people, because the Joint Health and Safety Committee training gives the basics to health and safety requirements. How do you manage basic health and safety in organization? So the more people you have trained, the more benefit you would have, because you would have more support in helping manage and sustain the program. So I hope I have answered your question, Tracy. You do need to have a joint health and safety committee if you have more than 20 employees. It doesn't need to be in one location.
Hey, thank you, Sobi. That's a classic example of OHS due diligence challenges during the new normal. So, which is why we are here today. And I appreciate Tracy. I hope you've triggered a series of questions coming in. There is a question and answer section, everyone. Please ask your questions. You've got an ISO lead auditor, you've got a core external auditor, and highly experienced occupational health and safety expert here. Please feel free in asking your questions about due diligence and occupational health and safety. Yes, John, you were about to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to add something that Sobi mentioned, and I think this is important. Relating to getting more people aware and trained, it falls back to CPO is really big on internal responsibility system. You might have heard of the IRS, but it really stands for the internal responsibility system. What really that means is everybody's responsible for safety. So that means that somebody's walking around and there's an oil spill somewhere, you tell a supervisor to clean it up. You're trying to identify near misses. And the other thing, what Sobi mentioned before, which I 1000% agree, the foundation to any safety program is the job hazard analysis. And it doesn't matter what sector you're in. Obviously, if you're in construction, a lot more higher risks, for a retail outlet. With that said, one thing I would recommend and suggest, do not just have this on an HR ownership or dedicated one person for the Joint Health and Safety Committee to do it. It's a collaborative process. And more importantly, once you have workers know a lot. A lot of people think, oh, let's get the middle management involved on creating a process and a design. You can get so much from a worker. And to be specific, and Sobi mentioned specific. And in my experience, 23 years of executive leadership in large corporations, it's all about mitigating your risk. At the end of the day, executives or business owners or what have you is responsible to increase market share, reduce costs, expand revenue, and mitigate risk. This is that one area that you have to look at mitigating your risk. And the other thing is once you have if you're proud of your program. So let's just say, hypothetically, you did it properly, it's sustainable, meaning being consistent, just like anything in life. If you're not consistent, it's gonna fall away. Let's just say that you have a proud program, everybody knows about it, you implement it effectively, and people are doing consistently. That's a business strategy, a great talking point to be able to showcase that to potential new business customers. A lot of businesses may have to approve a very sound program, proving it in regards to retaining them as a client or opening up new business opportunities. So as a business strategy, having a very effective, sound program that you're proud of, that you want to showcase. And if you're not proud of it, you obviously don't talk about it. So I would encourage every small, medium-sized business or large businesses, it's like protocol. It is what it is. But for small, medium-sized businesses, I challenge you to look at this as an opportunity to not only keep your employees safe, to prove due diligence, God forbid something did happen. Doesn't matter. You can't control incidents and accidents. Doesn't matter how good you are. But you have the right to control as an employer safe practices, more importantly, proving due diligence, God forbid something happens, so you don't lose your business by this unnecessary, avoidable fine. Anyways, Sobi, sorry, I just wanted to add a little color to that.
Thank you, John. I mean, that kind of reminds me to address one of the, again, opportunity that we normally see as external auditors is currently under 2015 core standards, element 2 hazard assessment. The common question we ask is worker reps being involved, not worker reps, workers involved in the hazard identification and review process. Most times, and I have seen our large consulting team who supports large number of clients for core, we tend to do the legwork for the client with the hazard assessment, because hazard assessment is a huge undertaking. And you need to know how to go about identifying hazards. You need to understand all the various different exposures and hazards. You understand the rating system, and then recommending controls and referring that to legislative requirements and all kinds of stuff. So it is a quite daunting and very involved task. It consumes a lot of time. In most cases, consultants do support with those aspects of it. That's okay to get consultants help, but do have a team that is going to be involved internally to review what the consultants have done. These are some of the things that I have learned from our consulting team. The consulting team would do the legwork, but the employers and their team, consisting of supervisors, workers, have to sit together to review the various different types of hazard assessments that's done and give their feedback and input. And then you do need to document who was involved in the reviewing and approval process as well. So these are definitely some of the things that you guys should consider and implement at your workplace as well. Moving on to the next slide, Eddie.
Yeah, so a quick question here. There are two questions, one from Bob and Jerry on JHS. You want to take them right now, or do you think we can take them?
That's fine. I could take them right now.
Okay, so the thing is, one of the questions is a good one. Actually, you did say that for 15 workers, it's better to be proactive rather than being reactive and get a committee ready. So Bob wants to know that in that case, do they get the members, the worker rep and the manager rep to be trained mandatorily? Is the certification training completion a requirement then, or do they have to wait until the 20 employees are over?
Bob, great question. Whatever I'm recommending is best practice. It is nowhere written in the Occupational Health and Safety Act that says, if you have 15 or more, have a committee. They say that if you have 20 or more employees, have a committee with one worker rep, one management rep, and both of them have to be certified. What I'm recommending is to divide up the responsibilities to manage your health and safety program. Have the committee. So the committee is going to be kind of like your steering committee that's going to assist you in sustaining and maintaining your program. For that, the training, I stress enough on training, because if they don't understand what they are going to be overseeing and managing, what kind of support are you going to get from that? So recommended to put them through the certification training so that they understand the basics and the requirements of what they need to maintain and how they can go about doing all that. Because the joint health and safety training gives them a crash course on identifying hazards, the various different types of hazards, physiological, chemical, you name it. They identify the various types of hazards, how to rate them, and then what are their obligations based on regulatory requirements. So you're empowering them with knowledge.
So, Jerry wants to know that whether current HSR, health and safety reps can actually join the JHSC automatically when the number of regularly employed workers
definitely, and
50, goes above 50.
HSR, I would highly recommend, again, another opportunity I see as an auditor is what training have you given to a safety rep? People nominate a safety rep and they say, okay, you have a safety rep. Do they have any understanding of their duties and responsibility? I know from the Dean's report, the Ontario government has identified this as an opportunity, safety reps additional training, but since it's not mandatory, many employers are not following that. But again, we are talking about due diligence. We are not talking about minimum standards. If you can provide them and empower them with more training, it is for your benefit and for the safety of your staff. You are having more people who understand what they are doing and trying to support you in maintaining and sustaining your program.
Thank you very much, Sobi. You can now proceed with your presentation. And I do encourage people to keep asking questions. This is really getting engaging. And I know John likes it that way when people, John and Sobi and myself, we are the old school guys. We love you engaging with us and asking questions. Go ahead, Sobi. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Adi. Okay, so when we talk about employee training, I think we addressed some of the training opportunities in the previous slides. Training needs to be conducted and documented. So again, there's various different ways and types that you could deliver training. You could bring a group together and bring an instructor. One of the things I always tell the clients is your instructor have to be competent. What is the definition of a competent person? They need to have the training, the knowledge, and the experience to be a competent trainer. A competent trainer can deliver training to others. And again, with I would encourage each and every one of you, when you have the time, go to the court bulletins under the Ministry of Labor Training and Skills Development website. Click on OHS, Occupational Health and Safety. And when you click on OHS, you could see the court bulletin on your right-hand corner. The court bulletin says the companies who are being charged for accidents and incidents that has happened, for what reasons, and what reasons under the Occupational Health and Safety Act. So in terms of conducting training, there's more than legislations. The trainer have to be a qualified trainer. Again, it's a legal liability. So sometimes it's better for you to get somebody who is a professional to deliver the training than trying to do it internally. Other means of training, delivering training nowadays is e-learning. Majority of the training are awareness-based training. The 4 mandatory training I was talking to you about, they are mandatory awareness-based training. You could deliver these awareness-based training as e-learning. They are about half-an-hour modules. You enroll the people. There are many different solutions available. In fact, for many of our clients, we recommend and provide solutions for mandatory training as e-learning. It's easy. Again, the sustainability piece needs to be factored in. Many organizations would do training, once every 3 years or once every 5 years. In my opinion, that's not enough. Certain mandatory training, especially when you're revamping your program, needs to be communicated on a regular basis. Ministry of Labor did come up with the new infection control training, and it's an e-learning. What we did is we actually took that and included as part of our mandatory training bundles to our clients, and they all take the infection control training. And again, these are awareness-based training. So have some sort of records that you can pull out and show to Ministry of Labor when they come in for the inspection. So if you have, again, a lot of people try to do training in many different ways, as long as you are maintaining records, matters. My recommendation in this day and age, always think about people, process, and technology. Who are the people who's involved? What kind of exposures do they have? Identify the process, how you're going to manage and mitigate the risk. Then come up with possible ways of integrating technology to help you sustain and maintain the program. New hires need to go through orientation training. Orientation consists of making sure they have all the basic mandatory awareness training and also job specific and location specific information that they need to know. And you should have some form of a standardized orientation for your location, your organization based on your hazards, to cover all those details and get them to sign off, but as I said, utilizing technology as electronic means or paper-based, but you do need to do this for each and every employee that you recruit. Again, going back and looking at, you have a whole pile of safe work instructions or policies, procedures. Is it nice sitting in some shared folders or binders or e-binders or whatever it is? No, you do need to have review and acknowledgement by the various different staff who perform the various different responsibilities or tasks. Safe work instructions have to be reviewed and acknowledged. Anytime you are making changes to the safe work procedures, they need to be recommunicated, and you do need to get acknowledgements, and you do need to have signatures or times to show that so-and-so has acknowledged at this time. Again, reopening challenges, factor the COVID hazards, any updated policies and with it, and you do need to get your employees to acknowledge those as well. So I guess that pretty much covers all the training context of OHS management. The last piece I'm going to cover for today is on OHS responsibilities. We spoke about employers' responsibility. We addressed a lot on supervisors and managers, and we spoke about workers. So just to summarize, under Section 25 in the Provincial Guidelines for Occupational Health and Safety Act, the one key takeaway I want all of you to have is, have you done everything reasonable under the circumstances to protect your employees? That is your question that you need to ask yourself on a regular basis. Have I done everything reasonable under the circumstances to protect my employees? If the answer is yes, ask yourself, okay, great. How can I prove my due diligence? What processes do I have in place to prove my due diligence? How am I maintaining the program? Am I providing ongoing information to my employees? Am I working together with the Joint Health and Safety Committees if you have a committee? Am I giving them the needed resources, support to act efficiently and effectively? Am I meeting the regulatory compliance? And what are some actions have I taken to sustain the program on an ongoing basis? So these are some of the questions and concerns that a senior manager employer should ask. And according to Section 27 in the Occupational Health and Safety Act, which is the supervisor's manager's responsibility, you need to make sure whatever policies and procedures the employer has is communicated to your staff. And once it's communicated, you need to hold them accountable. You need to advise them of potential hazards and exposures, communicate the policies and procedures to do their job safely. And once that's done, you need to hold them accountable. If PPE is a requirement for the various different tasks that they require to do, you need to ensure that's clearly communicated, that they're following the protocols. If they are not following the protocols, you do need to take disciplinary action for non-conformities. And disciplinary actions, again, even if it's a verbal warning, find out a way to document that. These are your due diligence. If a same employee were to have let's create a scenario. You have told an employee to wear safety glasses while performing a particular task. And the employee has a habit of taking off the glasses while performing the task. And one day it resulted in an eye injury. And it's a serious eye injury. It's a critical injury. Ministry of Labor comes in to investigate it, and they found out that the person was not wearing a safety glasses. And in your policies and your hazard assessment, your policies and procedures clearly indicates that they should be wearing safety glasses. Yes, it was the worker's fault, but the question that they're going to ask is, as a supervisor, do you know this worker had a habit of doing this? And if so, what actions have you taken to ensure that the worker clearly this is a job requirement? You cannot say at that point here, say, oh, I did speak to him several times and I warned him. That's all hearsay. If it's not documented, if you don't have a process for following through disciplinary action, then as a supervisor, you have failed. So these are some key things to think about, takeaways for you to see how you are going to maintain due diligence. As an employee, you have certain responsibilities. Your employees need to follow the policies, procedures, know and understand the hazards that they work in. They do have the rights to refuse unsafe work. They do have the right to report unsafe work and conditions, and they do need to wear the proper PPE that's required of them, and ask their supervisor or employers of any safety concerns that they have. So that kind of summarizes some of the things that I want to cover today as part of this reopening challenges and due diligence seminar. So, Adi, the last, can you?
So, Sobi, just because we only have a few minutes here, Sobi, I'm just going to jump in. As I mentioned at the beginning of my introduction, that I will go very high level because there's people on this call that may have the resources, may already have a great program, but there could be a few people on this call that are looking for help. You know, at the end of the day, everybody's in a different situation. So if you are one of those companies that are looking for assistance or also know about the excellence program, want to take part in the excellence program, want to know more about it, I'll be more than happy to be able to walk you through it. So I'm just going to give you a very high level, just for time purposes. If you look at the logo, you got the 4S SafeCom logo there, but the excellence program provider logo. That is a badge. That is a digital badge. Now, this is where I get back to business strategy. So if you are wanting to be a part of the excellence program, you can get this digital badge that you can add it to your website or your signature to prove to other companies that you're part of a structured program that is part of the WSAB that was a collaboration with the CPO. Very similar to the ISO certification process. The excellence program has 36 topics, 5 topics per year you're able to get a rebate by. And they created this for a reason for small businesses to be able to slowly get into full compliance with a sustainable program and being able to be fully accredited with the CPO. I want to talk to you about why we created our unique program. This is totally different as we're one of the providers with the excellence program. And there's several others. And I wanted to explain this. This came out in 2020, this whole program. So they put all the design together in 2019, WSAB and everything. Any type of new program has different challenges. There were, I think there was close to 50 providers in Ontario. You have to go through an excellence provider to become in this program. And now there's only around 28. And the reason I want to explain this, give you some understanding. The reason why there's only 28 now, half of them dropped off. Unfortunately, there's a lot of time that's needed to be able to assist companies in order to be able to maximize your rebate. There's so many specific details and time consuming on the part of the company in order to successfully effectively pass those topics and get that rebate. So, we didn't want to let down our clients when we first rolled this out. We just lost a lot of time and bandwidth in our end of it, but we pivoted. We pivoted for a reason, because we know that this excellence program is awesome. We understand through experience that it does take more time on the client, because a traditional provider, nothing wrong with them out there, when you pay, the traditional ones, about $1,500 a year or $1,200 a year or what have you, you get 3 group meetings, multiple companies, you listen in for a couple hours, they give some kind of advice, and then you're on your own. And so there's that type of setting. And we were that setting too when we first launched it. So we decided now to roll out this program. So if you're looking to really, truly be compliant, and as just to mitigate your risk, to be able to add another business strategy, to be able to help inquire new business opportunities, because you can be part of the excellence program, a great talking point, and to be able to showcase that. What we've designed is to be able to assist clients that don't have a dedicated resource, lack of bandwidth, and lack of experience. So what we do is we have a dedicated project team, and this with 2 people that are assigned to a client. And what we do is we start off with doing we do a compliance review. So we go on site to do a compliance review and a job hazard analysis to identify all the potential risks and to create a task list. Okay. Which Sophie mentioned about the foundation to any health and safety program, that is the most critical, most important, and time consuming. So if you're looking for experts to come in and do that with you, and then identify it and create a task list, and then on top of that, what we've done is we looked at, because everybody's, you have to prioritize. So through that risk assessment, creating the task list, in our program, we create 15. So your most high risk, hazard assessment tasks, and create 15 job hazard procedures and 15 job safe practices. And the unique part of our program, when you go to the last part of the online management system, we upload all that information into an online management system, which includes training, a training matrix, to be able to acknowledge all the safe work practices and procedures in their own employee profile, to prove that due diligence, God forbid something did happen, okay? And at the same time, through the process to make sure that we do the proper evidence stories and assistance to require forms and procedures, we handhold you through the year, the 12-month calendar, to be able to maximize that 5 topics to get you that rebate. Because a lot of companies don't know that there is a minimum $1,000 per topic for a rebate if you pay over $7,000 in annual premiums per year. If you are a company that health and safety is still so important to you, you only have like 7 employees, you're only paying $700 a year for WSB premiums, well, you will get 75% of that full amount back. So, but if you're a company that has more than 20 employees, usually the nice fit is between 20 and 60, usually has those challenges, but enough risk out there, this program is really good for you. So without going in great detail, because we're past our time, if you're interested, send an email to Addie, and Addie will send something out to you. I'll be more than happy, no obligation. I'm just here, honestly, to provide value, to give you another option to consider. So if you're a leader on the call or an owner, or if you are a safety coordinator or just a supervisor that you want to learn more, I would be more than happy to schedule a virtual just to make it easier for time purposes, to be able to walk you through a little bit more details of how the program works, what's involved. I'll demonstrate the online management system. So if you've never seen a demonstration on an online system and you thought, hey, you know what? This is something I've always wanted to look at and consider, I'll walk you through and do a demonstration of our system, because it's a full turnkey package. Consulting to be able to do the heavy lifting, coaching and mentoring to make sure you actually sustain it with the implementation process, with an online management system to keep the program alive, easy use, and everything else, to maximize your rebates that you're going to get from the WSIB. Because there's no point of joining a provider, not being able to execute the topics, and you're not going to get any money back. So at the end of the day, if you're looking for a full solution, maximize your rebates, improve your program to be able to actually have a great design implementation process to keep that program alive, and have a great talking point for your business strategy to know that you are a part of this program, then let me know if you want to have an hour virtual meeting to go through it. No obligation. That's all. Okay, that's it.
Thank you so much, John, for the explanation, and it ties in very correctly with those three major challenges that you spoke about. And I am taking 5 more minutes because I really appreciate the fact that we see 26 employers still logged in, and that just tells me, Sobi, how interested people are, and as employers, understand more about occupational health and safety and to lead from the front. So happy to see 26 people, and the points you made ties in with all the challenges that you mentioned, the 3 major challenges, and that was the whole reason for creating the program. So we do have, let's say, another 3 minutes that we can wait, because there are 26 people out here. There is an ISO lead auditor out here as well. So if you have any questions with regards to JHSC or with regards to any reopening challenges that you're facing in terms of your health and safety program, you've got an expert right here. So, yeah.
So a couple of things I would address here. I mean, when we talk about SME, I'm very passionate about helping SME, because SMEs, you're starting off. You are struggling to get the business going. And one of the things that you want to do is make sure that you're meeting the legal compliance. It's not just meeting the legal compliance. And we have seen this many times with Ministry of Labor and critical accidents and everything else. People have taken the action to put in place some level of the program, but they haven't integrated the process and technology piece to sustain the program. So what happens is every so often, every few years, they need to reinvest resources. When I say resources, time, money, people, to again go back and implement the program over and over again, which is going to end up costing them a lot more money. Thanks to WSIB, the Safety Excellence Program is a way to be engaged in implementing and sustaining, also getting some rebate back at the same time. Today, this is the only means to get any kind of rebate from WSIB. WSIB used to have their near programs and all kind of stuff. All that is gone. Right now, the only way you could actually get a rebate is to be engaged in a safety excellence program. The reason why is safety excellence program helps company actually come up with processes in place to actually implement and manage a health and safety management system. And one of the challenges, or a common challenge that we see among SME, is they need help to get started. They don't have the expertise, they don't have the resources to get things going. So it's always advisable for you to choose a company, a third-party provider who can support you to put the foundational pieces in place. Once you have the foundational pieces in place, always look at people, process, and technology in this age. How are you going to integrate all that and come up with a sustainable way to maintain the program? These are some challenges I always see, even as a co-external auditor. There are many times companies that I have audited in the past reach out to us and say, well, our internal auditor has left, I need some help. Can you guys help us? And that's because they have on 1 or 2 key individuals to monitor and maintain the program. And the rest of the organization seems disjointed with all the various different processes to maintain and sustain the program. So always think about how you're going to sustain it. The more people who are involved with the defined process is going to help you with that. And integrate some technology as part of the solution as well, because paper trails do get stopped at somebody's desk. And if it's a person who's managing the program and that person leaves, all the paper trail is going to be lost, or it's going to be stopped. You can't show the sustainability piece for maintenance.
Sobi, sorry to interrupt you. There is a question, and I'm sure it's one of your favorites as an ISO lead auditor, and you keep getting it, and you've been getting it a lot in the last few months. ISO versus core. What is the difference? Francis wants to know. And he also wants to know at ISO, do you automatically get core? But I'm sure you have a very good answer for that.
Great question, Francis. ISO versus core, simple thing. Ask yourself, what is your core business? Do you operate outside of Ontario? ISO is core is very much construction focused as of now. So companies who are in the construction industry tend to lead towards core. The reason being is most of the construction companies tend to provide services in Ontario, or major buyers in Ontario have requested for core certification as a qualifying, in order for you to bid on projects, you do need to have core. But if you are an organization that does provide services outside of Ontario and do provide services outside of the country, then ISO may be a better choice for you. Especially outside the country, don't even think about it, go with ISO 45001 standard. If you are not in construction industry, if you are outside of construction, maybe ISO would be a better choice for you. ISO 45001. The second part to your question is, if you have ISO, can you get core? The biggest difference between core and ISO is ISO, you could scope it to cover only your administrative office, or you could scope it to cover your entire operations, or you could scope it for just one location. With core, it is a wholesome approach. So it's everything encompassing. You can't slice it and dice it. So what core would ask for, what IHSA would ask for, is a copy of your external audit from ISO and the scope that was covered. If your scope is wholesome, it covers the entire operation and all the locations, it's easy transfer. They would look at it, they would look at the external audit report, and then they can give you the core equivalency for it. But if the scope is very narrow, then you will have challenges in getting core equivalency.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, Sobi. There's a follow-up question from Francis as well. He's saying that Francis is a Ontario-only company, his company, and then they're from the construction industry. So, do you recommend core? Maybe that is something that can be taken offline by.
We can John. Definitely take it offline, and John can follow up and maybe set up a call.
I think, Francis, when I looked at your company name, I think you're an electrical contractor. So 100%, we're very heavy in that space. And managed to get a lot of companies in that space accredited, like Lexan and so on and so forth. So I'd be more happy, Francis, to connect with you to provide you with some different options to consider, or schedule something to speak with the owner and yourself to see if there's something that makes sense for you. That's all.
Thank you very much, everyone. It's been great engagement. It's 11:15 now. I'm so happy to see the questions coming in. So I think it's time to say goodbye. We're getting closer to the Thanksgiving weekend as well. So we really appreciate everyone participating in this webinar and hearing from Sobi. And thank you so much, Sobi, for providing us with your time and all your inputs for due diligence. Thank you, John, for a wonderful explanation of the key challenges the employees are facing, its pinch points that are troubling them during the new normal. We really hope to come up with many more such webinars in the future to educate you and provide you with high-level insights. And please feel free to connect with us, and we will be sharing a feedback email shortly, and I will be connecting with you. If you have any or need to know more, please feel free to connect with me, and then I'll help you connect with the right people. That's it from 4S Consulting Services, Inc. We hope you all have a great day and an awesome rest of the week. Happy long weekend as well in advance. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much. Stay safe.